All right. Good morning once again. You're welcome to Digital Zip Hub. Okay, so just to update us, we have come to the end of how to create contents in a web page and how to also modify the appearance of those same contents using CSS. So it's assumed that we have successfully completed two of the programs involved in your web development course. So we are stepping into another language, which is also used for front-end development, which is known as JavaScript. HTML and CSS, they are not actually core programming languages. And because they are not core programming languages, that is why they seem very simple to us. You can see the way we are able to play around them without facing any form of difficulties. We just have to know at this point that the main journey of your web development is just starting now. Though what you have done with HTML and CSS, they are prerequisites, what you need to know before you dive into JavaScript, because JavaScript is a core programming language. So HTML and CSS, they are like subordinate. They are just like helpers. They help, just like HTML help us to add the content, and CSS helps us to decorate them. But the main technology that runs the entire front end is the JavaScript, which is the core programming language. Now, why I'm telling us all this is for us to increase our commitments, not to scare us, but to increase our commitments. So if you are thinking, that is why you see me sending Flourish back to go and do the needful, because researching and debugging is part of learning programming. So students are not to be helped in every aspect of their programming in order to allow them to go and look outside the box and for them to put themselves in order. Whatever challenge you are facing, someone has faced it as far as this program is concerned. So which means that the web development has a very large community. There are a lot of people there that have faced challenges you are facing. And thank God today we have a ChatGPT. All you need to do is for you to know how to prompt in ChatGPT. Is a skill that you need to have as a program, prompting, which means how you can describe your challenge to ChatGPT and be able to what to get exactly what you desire to get. And then when ChatGPT gives you the code, you should be able to know how to lift them to wherever you want to place them. Because after all, when you finish learning the entire program, there will be at times that you have to go to ChatGPT to generate entire page code without you writing anything manually. But you will still need the knowledge of these classes to twist, to know what to remove and know what to add for you to get your desired website. So since we say JavaScript is a core programming language, it means that learning a new language is not always very easy. Let's bear that at the back of our mind, because it's a new language, just like the way some of us understand Igbo. And some of us can speak Hausa. So you will find out that it wasn't easy for you, even if it was your mother tongue. At some points, you stumble before you were able to catch up. So that is how it is. So just in case you start seeing something looking very difficult or even very simple, you know that it is normal at the beginning because it's a new language you are learning. You have to start from scrolling before you stand, before you walk, and before you fly. Right, so I'll just start with, I have few things I want to achieve in this section, being the very first class. So can I write Introduction to JavaScript? So I'm going to start with the definition. What and what do I plan to cover in this section? We'll look at what JavaScript is all about as one of the most used front-end development language. And then we'll also look at some of the features and that we're exposed to all some of its characteristics. And that will also point out some of the core reasons why you should apply JavaScript in your website. No website exists today without the input of JavaScript. Otherwise, that website will be as good as dormant website that does not have life. Though today we try to use CSS effect like animation to add some effect. But in the absence of that, you need JavaScript fully to add some interactivity. So we will also look at how do we set up a development environment to speak JavaScript, just like the way we did when we were in HTML and CSS. We learned how to set up the development environment. So we'll look at that. We'll look at how to create our first JavaScript file. And then that is what we intend to cover in this section. So in the next section, we take it further to learning variables, learning JavaScript output methods, and then also on and so forth. So let's quickly start with what is JavaScript? What is JavaScript? But before we look at the definition, for a reason, I want to take the second topic to an extent before I come back to the first topic. Because I want to be able to write comments to explain what I'm doing, just like the way we did in HTML. Remember when we wanted to speak HTML, the first thing we did is to set up a project. And then inside that project, we created different files. And all of them were in the root folder. So the same way we are going to go this morning. So I would like to create a folder in documents. So somebody make sure you remind me in the next class that our project folder is in documents. So let's assume that though it is assumed that you have an existing project and even you are implementing it in your real website. You have a project that you have developed, just like the assignment I gave to us now. You have a project that you must have developed with HTML and CSS. So you are bringing in JavaScript on top of those projects. So, but because we are just learning, I'm going to create a new file to learn JavaScript from scratch. And then after some time, I'll be sending us back to that project. Once we have learned some effects, once we have learned some actions that are addable to an image or any of those things that you must have created, I'll be sending you back to that project to implement it. That is the reason why you notice I kept insisting that you must have a project, because once you are in JavaScript and you don't have a project, all the things you'll be learning is as if you will not have a place to implement them. So those that are here to get the projects, is make sure that you do yourself good. Now, I want to name this, the host of this class, I think, what will I use now? Tuesday and Thursday. Okay, let me use Tuesday / Tuesday, Thursday, web class. Somebody should help me to take note of this. So I'm naming this this. Now, as usual, we ought to have created. In fact, let's do that. Let's create other related folder. So let's just quickly add the image folder. Let's add the image folder just in case we get to an aspect where we start working with images. So for now, yeah, let me add another folder. Let me add another folder, and I will name that folder JS since we are in JavaScript. Then just for future purpose, in case we still want to work with CSS, definitely we'll work with CSS. So let's have these three folders. For now, I'm not going to add images. So once I get to that aspect where I want to work with images, I will make sure that I populate the images. So I'll go back to my development IDE and install the whole of that folder in here. So I go to File as usual, open your folder, and then you target the document where you created that folder. I think is TT this. Then make sure you do not open it in case you have forgotten. Right, so once we have achieved this, the next thing is for me to create my HTML file. You can see for the fact that you are entering JavaScript does not mean that we are not going to work with HTML. HTML is very much needed, and CSS is also very much needed. That is the reason why you spend that time to understand them before coming to JavaScript, because we're working alongside with them. So in a moment, you get to know why you must have content before you think of using JavaScript. So I will just create my HTML file, and of course, that file will be created in my root folder, not in any of this folder. And then I'll make that file, and I'll still name it index.html. Index.html. And then let me quickly activate my HTML default file structure as usual. And then I can just give it a title, welcome to Digitech Seal Hub. So let me increase it a little. I hope with this white background we are okay, or should I change the background to black? Are we okay with the white background? Somebody should respond, please. Want to be sure.
We're okay, sir.
Okay. So we already know what is called comments all the way from HTML and CSS. Of course, comments are used to explain our code either to ourselves or to the third party. So you cannot write code without using comments. So let's say introduction to JavaScript. Introduction to JavaScript. So the first thing I want us to understand is the definition. What is JavaScript? What is JavaScript? So that's the first topic. Let's look at what is JavaScript. So JavaScript is a high-level, dynamic and interpreted programming language. JavaScript is a high-level, dynamic, interpreted programming language that primarily used for client side scripting. Let me come again. I say JavaScript is a high level, dynamic and interpreted programming language that is primarily used for client side scripting. Now, the word client side is a special term in app development and web development, which denote what? The front end. The front end. So we can as well say that JavaScript is one of the most used technology or language for developing front end of a website. And like we have established from HTML before, when we started, I told us that front end of a website is also known as the user's end. That particular part of your website that people have access to without, demanding for password. That particular aspect of your website, as soon as people type the address, which is the Uniform Resource Locator, URL, that the browser takes them to without asking for login details. The whole of that aspect is called the client side. And that is why we now have the server side. We have the server side. The server side is also another term which denotes the back end. So anytime I use the word client side, we are talking about what? The front end. So let's take note of that. The JavaScript is a client what? Scripting language. Right? Now, let's point out the key functions of JavaScript in web development. Now, I will sequence it from HTML so that you know at what point JavaScript is involved. And you also know why do I need to learn JavaScript, even if it is difficult to learn. Why must I stay true? Because of certain attributes. Number one, JavaScript adds life to your website. The website without JavaScript and without the touch of advanced CSS, which is the animation, such a website do not have life. And the current days websites, they are expected to be dynamic websites. A dynamic website is a website where there are a lot of communications programmed within time intervals. What do I mean? Just like what Flourish is trying to achieve. That is why I am a kind of paying less attention to that, because I know this is where you are supposed to achieve that thing you are trying to achieve with CSS. JavaScript has a function called carousel, which helps us to slide images just like she wanted to achieve. That is action. So JavaScript is the language that brings actions to those content that you have published with HTML. So you cannot see the connection now. So it's just like you saying that HTML helps you to first of all add the content. For example, the content can be an image, the content can be text, the content can be links, and then once you have added any of this, you can now say, okay, these are assumed to be dead element that does not have life. So you want to now use JavaScript to build actions on those contents. So you can see why you must know HTML first. Now, you are bringing actions to those content, but we need to also ensure that the appearance of those content look good. before those actions can make real sense. That is why you need CSS. For the fact that maybe I program this to be bouncing in a website, that is JavaScript, playing this action on this, instead of this just remaining like this from the beginning to the end. So I can use HTML to add this content, and then I will use CSS to say, okay, it should be well positioned, have a color, and the JavaScript, your work is just to come and begin to make it to behave like this or to do like this. So you can see why the sequence is very important. HTML add the content, JavaScript determine how the look like, and then, CSS, JavaScript comes to add the action. So that is why in that definition, I use the word dynamic. So JavaScript is a front-end programming language which helps us to create dynamic applications. It helps us to add certain interactivity to our web pages contents. So the key word there is interactivity. The interactivity of a website is different from responsiveness of a website. So when we say a website is interactive, we are talking about so like I was saying, interactivity of a website is different from the responsiveness. I hope we understand that. We are trying to achieve responsiveness in CSS. But when we come to JavaScript, yes, JavaScript can also implement responsiveness, yes. But what we are saying is that the main focus of JavaScript is all right. So like I was saying, interactiveness of a website is about action, how things are communicating. So that is actually what JavaScript focuses on. So any website, you see a lot of communication. For example, now you log into a website. After some time, you discover that some things begin to pop up like ads. But initially, when you go to that website, those actions were not there. So that is a programmer programming those actions just to make the website lively. That once somebody gets to the website, meet certain HTML elements in this appearance, after 10 seconds, let that content begin to rotate, or let that content shift, or let there be certain action on that content. All of these are communication which can be implemented. So, and another point I want to make here is that because sometimes some of us, we don't know that we are app developers. Anybody who understands JavaScript is a programmer. But what type of programmer are you? You are a web app developer or a programmer. In other words, the apps that you develop, they are apps that are hosted in a web server or in a website. They are apps that are designed to run only in a website. So what differentiates you from the traditional ad developer who that develop like OPay and MoneyPoint and the rest of them is that they develop stand-alone app that can run on mobile. That's why they are called mobile app developer. App that somebody can install directly on a mobile phone without going through a website. both of you, you are programmers and you are app developer. It's just that where your app runs are different. Your app run in a website while they are all run on a mobile phone. And the website also run on phone, but it has to be hosted in a server. So, in other words, we are saying that JavaScript is a programming language that helps us as web developer to create dynamic applications in our website. That's number one key takeaway point. Number two, JavaScript is a programming language that helps us to add interactivity to our web pages. Number three, JavaScript is a programming language that brings life, that helps us to add action to our web pages content. So these are the three key points that we must not forget. So let's quickly look at some of the key features of JavaScript so that we know what differentiates it from other programming languages. Key features. So the next topic now is key features of JS. So the very first one, the very first key feature I want to explain is that particular term I use here, dynamic. Why did we use dynamic typing? Let me write it full like this. One of the features of JavaScript is dynamic typing, which means JavaScript is dynamically typed. And that means that you do not need to declare data type of a variable before using it. So when we get to variable concepts, I believe this will sync better. So what I'm saying temporarily, so I will just do this. You get to know this in a moment. Now let's assume that I want to create variable. So before we talk about variable, variables are containers which we use as programmer to hold value within a program. And this value will be needed in the course of your programming. So for example, I can come and say, okay, I want to create a variable or a container that will hold my name, Prosper. So I will say, okay, name equals to, and then because my name is a text, that is why I am putting it in a bracket. So I'm going somewhere. I will not actually start talking about variable, but I just want us to understand that word, dynamically type programming, or dynamically type programming. Now, because my name is a text, that is why I'm quoting it, right? Now, let me go back to the explanation I gave to us under what? JavaScript. One of its features is dynamically typed programming language. Dynamically typed programming language. Now, what it means is that, you see, what I am currently storing in this, variable called name, I do not need to tell JavaScript the type of data it is. I don't need to tell JavaScript that this is a string or this is a number. It finds out itself. That is the meaning of what? That feature, dynamically typed. So it knows, it finds out what the type of value or data you are storing in a variable. Now, initially, if you are using programming languages like C# and the rest of them, which happen to be the old Java, all those languages, you are supposed to write it like this. Let's say what? Let me just say what? Name2. Name2 equals to, then you type str, and then you open a bracket before you define that string. So this is what we are talking about. So adibin JavaScript is not a dynamically typed programming language. For each time you are storing a value in a variable, you have to tell JavaScript the type of value it is by saying it's a string by typing this constructor. Or if it's going to be a number, you must tell JavaScript that what is an integer. And then if it is an integer, then it does not require putting it in a quotes. So you see what I just did now. So, but instead of me writing this function, I just simply pass the value. So which means that it is now left for JavaScript to find out the type of data this is. That is what we are saying. All right, so that is the meaning of that feature. So let's look at the second feature. Second feature of JavaScript is objects. Objects oriented programming. Object-oriented programming language. So what does that mean? Which most time we abbreviate to what? P, which is what? Object-oriented programming. So what does this mean as one of the attributes of JavaScript? What does that mean to us? It means JavaScript is an object-oriented language that supports inheritance, and encapsulation that supports inheritance and encapsulation. Now, what it means is this, just to break it down for us. Now, when programming started, that is why you notice that today what we have there is that the programming or the apps that we have today, they are very fast apps. They are apps that, as you are tapping, like OP, you can see the way they are run, though OP was developed with Python. As you are tapping, you see the way they are responding, because most of the apps we have there today, they are developed with modern languages, with a lot of AI. Now, but before then, those days, app used to be very slow. Why? Because if I want to store this, for example, in a program, for the fact that I want to develop this object, and in this object, I have different parts of it. I have the cover, so I'll create a variable and store this cover separately. And then maybe if there are other parts, I'll create different variables and store them differently. Before, in my programming, I will now assemble them together as one object that will give me the what exactly I'm looking for. But what we are saying is that today, the whole of this can be stored in one variable instead of splitting them into different variable that will end up making the app very slow. So that is the meaning of object-oriented. That is what it can store an object, that's the object and its property. So that is one of the feature of JavaScript. Then the third feature, so I will just hit on the major ones. The third feature is that is first class. First class function. It has first class functions. So which means that it has powerful functions. And when we start writing, when we start the implementation, you will see how powerful those functions are. So JavaScript functions are first-class what? Citizen. And that is one of the reasons why you see that it's almost impossible for you to build any website without using this language. Any questions so far? Any questions? So I will look at some of the, of course, I will just pick only one. The uses of JavaScript is for web development. So it's a language that you must learn. It's a must. It's not an optional language. Any question before we go to the next topic according to our plan?
Yes, sir. Sir, I wanted to ask if JavaScript is used for action, why not we learn HTML and enter JavaScript once instead of learning HTML and CSS before JavaScript?
Okay, I think somebody should. Let me find out whether somebody can answer that question in the class. If nobody can answer it, then I will go ahead and answer it. Can anybody respond to that question? Is CSS really necessary based on what she is asking? Tell us why CSS is necessary. I think I've explained that in this class, but that's why I'm asking whether somebody got it. Why is CSS necessary? Or are you saying we should scrap it? Just go to JavaScript. Can anybody try?
I think CSS and HTML is just like the beginning of the programming, but just as she said, that learning that first look like a long process from what we really want.
Okay.
So I think the HTML and the CSS is like the basic, the introduction to web development. But just as she said, but it looked like a long process away from what we're learning. So it's like this is
Oh,
what we really need the most, more than what we have been learning.
Why I was
okay.
asking is
Mm,
because we know that HTML is the structure.
mm,
CSS is just for decoration.
okay. And
But the same
JavaScript.
decoration,
Mm,
JavaScript can still give it to us and also give us action.
mm,
So why not just keep CSS since
aside.
JavaScript can still give us some decoration?
Okay, some decoration, not all the decoration.
Not all.
So that means you will still go and make CSS for the remaining one. You will put yourself in the basket, you figure out yourself. Okay. Okay. Even you yourself, you know that you need CSS because you are not able to differentiate. You are not able to write it up totally. Now, look at this. Please, I want us to understand some words where I said action. When I say action, there are limits to action you can get with CSS. CSS action, you know, it is the invention of the CSS animation that brought in some level of action. But you and I, by the time you are done with JavaScript, you will see the clear margin separating the form of actions you can achieve with CSS and the ones you can achieve with um, the one you can achieve with JavaScript. They are not the same. For example, now you cannot use CSS to create add to cart. That shopping page where you click on item and the item will be quoted and then proceed to what? To buy, to check in, check out. CSS cannot give you those sensitive communication. But when we talk about effects, I think that is where CSS comes in, or where it can play any role because you can make an maybe an item to have some effects, maybe dancing or color blinking. what the action we are talking about here is far more than that. We are talking about communication. So you cannot do without CSS. I think I was using pen, just that I can't find the pen here. I was using pen to illustrate. That was exactly the reason why I have to use that pen. When I started, I said HTML is to add the pen as your content. CSS, HTML can add the pen, and the pen can be arranged maybe slantly, and maybe that is not how you want it. You want it to stand what? Maybe horizontal. So CSS will now come and make it to what? To place very well. Then JavaScript will now come and begin to what? To add some actions. So please, you cannot, even you want to add those CSS effects in JavaScript, which is possible as we are going to discover, is the same CSS you'll be consulting, but instead of consulting the CSS in its own file, you will not be consulting it in what? In JavaScript. So that does not mean that CSS is written off. I hope that point is clear. CSS focuses on the decoration, the appearance of that element that will possess that action. Please, let's get, and if you do not add it, if you do not add that content, there cannot be CSS and there cannot be what? JavaScript. That is why HTML is needed. So, why I use that scenario to tell you that you are just starting the program does not mean that CSS and HTML should be relegated. Does not mean that. It's just like you now, without your face, can there be makeup? Flourish, answer me.
No, sir.
So
No,
between
sir.
your face and the makeup, which one is more important?
The face first.
The face first. So even we are saying that, I was just speaking from the angle of how you put more seriousness because of the difficulties in learning the languages. That does not mean that HTML is less than CSS, or sorry, less than JavaScript, because it's the main structure. It's just like what Tori said. The main structure that form your building is the structure. What form your house is the structure. All those painting, whatever, they are peripherals. But what we are saying is that those ones are not called programming languages that are always difficult to learn, that require more commitment to learn. They are markup, like that one is just a markup language, HTML, while CSS is just a decoration language. But they are very important. The number of months you have spent in them, JavaScript will just spend, even we are meeting an average of 3 times in a week, is a month's program. Highest 1 month and 1 week. But you spend almost 2 months learning HTML and CSS. That will tell you that what they are also very important. All right, so let's proceed with the class. So I was only trying to use this to explain one of the key features. So now the next thing we want to look at is how to set up, how to create your JavaScript file. How do we create JavaScript file? The file you have created is HTML file. Please, this file is HTML file. It's not JavaScript file. The reason why you schedule this folder is because you are going to create one type of JavaScript file. So let me sequence it this way, just like the way we had external CSS file. We have internal CSS file. And then we now have what again? Let me know whether anybody can help me out with the remaining one. We have external CSS file. We have internal CSS file. What is the remaining one?
And we have inline.
We have inline.
Inline.
Inline. The same way here in JavaScript. But for now, we are going to focus on internal and external. There are reasons for that. We must start learning JavaScript events before we can start the inline. So I can't talk about inline for now. So let me start with how to create internal JavaScript file. internal JavaScript file means that you are creating or you are writing JavaScripts in the same file with HTML, but in a different part or section. They are not going to be written together. You have to separate them. And you have to initiate the JavaScript with a tag, just like the way we initiated CSS in the head, if you can still remember, with what? Style tag. If you can still remember this. So before we could speak CSS in the same file with HTML, we did not add them together. Though it is also possible for you to put this here and speak your CSS in the same body. I think I've explained that to us before. But we are saying that standard practice do not permit us to have it here. Instead, you envelope them in the head section through the style tag. Now, in the case of JavaScript, you should not bring the JavaScript what? Tag here. You bring it just before the closing body. Just before the closing body. So you put the script there. So there are two tags we use here. When you are dealing with the internal, you use this one. When you are dealing with external, you use this one. So I click on this and then I open it up. Remember the positioning. I said it should always come before the closing button, the closing body. It should always come before the closing body. Please, we need to take note of that. And I'm going to prove it to us why it should come before the closing body. The reason is that there is a kind of hierarchical way of executing your code. So by the time we launch this in a browser, the code will run from the top and then to the bottom. And why are we positioning JavaScript here? Are we saying that the HTML code will have been executed? So if I have, for example, H2 here, and the H2 says, welcome to web development. Welcome to web development training. Welcome to what? Web development training. So let's assume. Now, are we saying that this code will be executed first before the code in your JavaScript? The answer is yes. What then now happen if you bring this, let's say you have written your JavaScript here. Let's say I take this from here. I take this from here and then I bring it here. So which means you are saying that JavaScript code should be executed first before what? Executing the HTML. What is going to happen is that JavaScript is going to claim that my role is to add action to HTML. So which means that the HTML should display first before my rule comes on it. So if I have displayed my own function, then HTML shouldn't display again. So what JavaScript will do is that after displaying itself, it will not delete whatever that comes after it. If eventually you have it like this. That is why professional standard says that your JavaScript should always come before the closing body, because it is assumed that before the closing body, there is no HTML tag under it. So there shouldn't be any HTML tag under it. All your HTML content should have been written before it. So this is what internal way of writing JavaScript. But because we need to get the action, we need to verify it and see whether there's communication. I will now bring in variable here, variable concepts. Okay, Flourish, you have a question?
Sir, I wanted to ask, you said before we should write the JavaScript where there is no other HTML function.
Yeah.
Let me, for example, now you want to write like something, all this write up, you write under. After writing all your body, you now write it under. It will now be moving with CSS animation under your body, like maybe explanation, or they are giving message or advert, but it will be under just one small line. What
Under
of if you
where?
want to write it?
Are you saying that you want to write code under this?
Yes.
Professionally, you are
Like
not allowed
one.
to put anything here. All your code that are meant to display in the body section of your browser should be limited between the opening body and the what? The closing body. Don't bring any code
Okay.
outside it.
Okay.
Are you following? So
Thank you, sir.
even if it display
Yes, sir.
is off standard, we have standard practice. Now, okay, so
Okay.
now let's look at I was trying to say that for us to confirm it, we have to use variable concepts. Though I'm going to talk about variable properly, probably in the next class. So, but my objective in this section, being the first one, is we know what JavaScript is. We know some of its characteristics, which we have already achieved, and then we know how to set up the development environment, which we are doing now. But I just want to borrow variable concept because it will not make sense that we create it here without writing any code and confirm it, and then we will not know that actually JavaScript is here. Now, what we are saying is that if I come here now and say, okay, let me use comment. So this is comment notation in JavaScript. So I'll just say what? Create variable to store my name. Create a variable to store my name. So I will say, okay, maybe first underscore name. You get to understand why I'm using all this in the next class. And then because my name is a string, so I'll put it in the string. So this quotation means what? String, which means text. I can just say prosper. Now, one thing about JavaScript is that when you finish writing your code like this, you must end it with semicolon. If you do not end it like this, it will work only if you do not plan to write any other code under it. Because the moment you come and start writing another code under it, it will now assume that you have uncompleted what? Scripts. But if you know this is the only line that you want to execute, you can execute it without adding the semicolon and it will still work. Right? So now, when we start variable, I will explain some other keywords that are used to initiate variable. Now, in JavaScript, when you write your code, the code will not display just like the way you write HTML, you just go to front end, you will not see it. It won't work like that in the case of JavaScript. You must display that particular code with another function. And that is where we have what we call what? JavaScript what? Display methods or output method, which we are going to deliberate on in our next class as well. So, but for us to confirm it, I will just use a very simple one that do not need much explanation, but I'm still going to explain it in that class. Now, let's try and run this file and see. The only thing you are going to see is what you. Okay, so like I was saying, So let's see the outcome of this file. If we run it, what we are going to see is just this. You are not going to see this because you have not commanded it to output. So let's run it and see so that you see what we are talking about. Let's wait for it. It's coming up. So you can see that the only content we have is the one we wrote with the HTML. The one we wrote with JavaScript did not output. Why? Because you have not used any of the output method. Like I said, that will be our major focus in the next class. Now, for us to see, because we want to confirm whether we have actually spoken JavaScript. For us to see this, while you are in the JavaScript section, I can just say what? I will just use documents. So this is one of the output method, document.write. I want to see it on the browser body, and then I will supply the name of the variable, which is this, which means that you want to output the content, which is Prosper, in the same page where you have already outputted this HTML content. So if I go back to the web page now, you can now see that what Prosper is not showing. But initially, it wasn't showing because you have not used any of the output method. So this confirms that we have created what? We have set up JavaScript in our project internally. So let's close with the external way of writing JavaScript. So let me comment the whole of this out for now. External JavaScript, just like the way we learned it in CSS. In fact, for the fact that we created a separate folder called JS, it means we have already planned to write our JavaScript in a different file from HTML. So the external JavaScript means you are separating your JavaScript from the HTML file. The same thing with what? CSS, which is the best practice. That is the best practice for debugging purpose, so that when there are issues, you are able to what? To separate them. Right? So for example, now, if I'm running this file, I'm getting some error, I can easily comment the JavaScript section and then see the reaction. If the problem disappears, then I know that I have to focus on what? My JavaScript to debug it. Now, for external, we are going to, first of all, go into this folder and create a file. Inside, you go inside the what? The JS folder and create a file. So I will name that file any name, provided it's not a keyword. So I can just say first, or let me just name it index. Then, but the extension will now be what? JS. Just like the way we have .html as the extension will now be JS. Then you click outside. Just like we were creating external CSS file. So with this, we have created JavaScript what? External file. Now, the next thing is, you write your comments. So I can say, okay, welcome to JavaScript programming. Welcome to JavaScript what? Programming. Now, because it's an external, let me do that thing. So I'm creating that same variable. Let's say what? First name. You see that the moment you are writing your code, your JavaScript code in its own file, you don't need to open that scripts tag. You open that script tag because you were borrowing space in HTML to speak JavaScript. But once you are writing the code in the file you save with .js, you do not need that script tag. So I can go ahead and do that same thing that we did here and see whether it's going to communicate with the external option. Then the same thing, I would say prosper. Then I'll cultivate the habit of always ending my code with what? Semicolon. Now, if I go to the website, it's not showing because we have not linked the two files. Because HTML is what we use to render the JavaScript functions. That is why even in CSS, there was no time I right-click on CSS file like this and then select display with live server. We always go back to the HTML file, because the HTML is one that renders the file on the browser. So while the HTML is rendering the file, then any CSS that is attached to it will follow. Any JavaScript that is attached to it will follow. That is the communication. So which means that if I want to see the outcome, it's not here. I should right-click and select display with live server. I should go to the HTML and right-click, which we have already outputted. But yet, it's not showing what we program in our JavaScript file. Why? Because we need to link this file together with this HTML. And that is the last thing. Now, linking it, you come back to the same place here before the closing section of your body tag, and then you type that script. But this time around, you choose the scripts that have this part, SRO C, which means the source, because you are like connecting to a different source that is outside this file. So you click here so that you can have this, and then you insert your / to display all your directories. Then from here, you know where you are going to. I'm going to JavaScript, and then I'll pick that file. If I go back to the front end, I should have that prosper display. But why is it not displaying yet? Because we have not authorized it with any of the method. So I'll now come back and say document dot write, just like we did there before. And then I'll supply the name, first name. Once you type the first letter, it will capture it because it's already in the library. So you click here, and then if I go there, you see the prosper. So this establishes to me that there is now communication between my JavaScript external file and the HTML, the render. I hope that is clear. This is where we are going to stop. So just to recap what we have learned today. Number one, we have already laid the foundation. We know what JavaScript is. We have also known some of the attributes, some of the characteristics of JavaScript as a programming language that help us to program actions on those HTML content across your web pages where they are needed. We also learned that JavaScript is the language that is used to add interactivity, that's communication, on our website content. And then we learned that JavaScript is used to build dynamic apps in our website. And then finally, we have learned how to set up our IDE to understand JavaScript and to create JavaScript first file that outputted prosper. Any question? So the next class we'll start with JavaScript variable, and we'll take different topics, not just the variable. We'll look at variable. We'll look at JavaScript output method. There are about 4 of them, and we are going to do a lot of manipulation with them. And then before we proceed, any question, please. If there's no question, when the video gets to you, make sure your assignment is that you should be able to display your name on the browser with JavaScript, not with HTML, just like I did now, both for internal and external. That is your assignment. Want to say something? This is questions.
Yes, sir. Hello, sir.
Okay, with you.
It's not a question, but please, I need a comprehensive video for HTML and CSS. I was left behind on the process. even the time when people switch to morning, I'm not so that I
Okay,
can able to do the formal
okay,
assignments with them.
okay, okay. What I'm going to do is to send you the compile. Where did I have it? To send it. I think I will just drop it in the group for order to also see, to drop it in the group. Let me find it now before I forget. Online development, HTML. Okay, so I'm going to drop this file in that group, WhatsApp group, I think. So you can see it now. We have 15 classes in HTML, 15 classes. So you go through them. Today now I'm going to add JavaScript on here. So I always compile all the link. At the end of the entire training, I'll give us the complete file again, and then so that you can always revisit even after graduation. That's what I'm going to do. So let me see if I can send you. Where is the group? Okay, the group is not. Yeah, okay. Let me upload it here, and then I'll forward it to you. Forward it to you. Any other questions, so that as soon as I'm done with this, we can call it a day. And please make sure you practice. So make sure you practice. Those of you that have not given me the project, make sure you work on it.
So there is another thing.
Okay.
Please, this time is affecting me seriously. Can we still amend to it?
No. There's nothing will make us to change this time. Particularly that your class have overchanged time. It's not working. Cannot come and start changing time again. Nobody should bring that option. I've given you guys the longest rope, and people have the longest rope that can be given to anybody on this earth. No bargain. So it's
So
either you reach or you. The only thing I can do is that, in fact, just make sure you stick to the class. It's just twice in a week. If you miss it, the videos are there. Once you miss a session, go and consult the video and put yourself through before the next class. Flourish, I hope that is not what you want to say. Let me know. Hope it's something different, so don't comment on that. Especially you, Flourish, and Austin. People are the reason why we have to take this decision. But to an extent, she was meeting up. But especially you and Austin, who did not encourage, and you were the one that canvassed for that time. So please, I want the class to end. This training has taken too long. I want it to end so that we can go to something else. So try as much as possible. If you miss a class, anybody here, if you miss a class, just know that you settle for video. Simple as that, so that we can move forward. Right. Okay, so see you. I've sent it. Okay, I'll forward it from his own chat now, because I think I have that group in the other, my WhatsApp line. I'll forward it now on Purity. All right, so see you in the next